Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy. And today we're talking about books that make you imagine an America where society has crumbled. How would you survive if you had to fend for yourself? Do you know how to grow crops, corn, peas, potatoes, purify water, protect the ones that you love at all costs? Dystopian author Susy Smith explores these questions in her gripping Asylum book series. In it, a young woman must learn to live off the land on the family farm while also taking a stand for freedom. Until, that is, the ugliest side of human nature shows up, and then she must fight for herself. With Ascendant, which is the second book in the Asylum series, the adventure continues, and it gets dark and rather ominous. Now, Susy lives in a small Oklahoma town, and she weaves authenticity into her writing. And she can talk to us about lots of things in addition to her writing, such as the fact that she is the curriculum specialist with the Kanza Tribe. We're going to learn more about that. And some of the dystopian themes that are associated with her series. Hello, Susy. Welcome to the show.
Hi. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. We have a lot to unpack, and this is going to be a fun ride because you and I have a lot in common. We both love The Walking Dead.
Yes.
We both love dystopian. We both love that dark side of human nature. First, Susy, can you give us the lay of the land and describe both books in the Asylum series? Because Asylum is book one, Ascendant is book two. Tell us what compelled you to write them.
What compelled me? The idea actually came after 9/11. So that's been several years ago. I just kind of took a look around at what was happening and how society and how we view humans was changing, and our lives have changed very rapidly since then. Not only politically, but with technology and things like that. In 2001, what do we have? A flip phone, maybe. Now we have smartphones. In 2001, I think AI for probably most people, or AGI, and super ASI, I believe, was maybe more fiction than fact, whereas now it is more fact than fiction. So,
yeah, you are so right. The world seems like, and I'm with you. I remember 9/11. I remember when that happened.
Yeah.
There's a whole generation that's grown up, though, with that being something in the history books, something mom and dad talk about.
Right. Just like my parents knew exactly where they were the day President Kennedy got shot. I will always remember where I was and what I was doing. When my mom called me on the phone and said, "Do you have your TV on?" I was like, "No." She goes, "You better turn it on." And so I will always remember that. That will always be imprinted on my brain. So
Yeah, mine too. And I think that leads into one of the main themes of your book is this idea that people need to learn some skills. They need to be able to think, and they need to prepare just in case something happens, because much like we talked about in the introduction, how many young people nowadays could actually grow a successful garden or clean their water, or worst case scenario, if something really bad happened, be able to defend themselves? Is that part of your inspiration as well?
Yeah, I have two Gen Zs that I look at, and they spent the majority. Well, they did not spend time outdoors like I did as a kid. They, kids have more screen time than outdoor time, so they don't know. They don't know what would happen if the economy crashed, and everything that you're dependent on that you think you need is ripped away. People lived for centuries without electricity, but now I think most younger generations would think that the world was actually coming to an end, if we didn't have the basic things like internet. And we're too dependent on the internet. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Google fan. I love Google because if you don't have an answer, just ask Google. And they'll know. And having that kind of information at our fingertips is just so different than how I grew up. So,
yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think, Susy, you're keying into the reason why dystopian and so many books and series, TV shows, for example, have keyed into that, because the writers of the world, the creators, the creatives have seen, that's what you do. You kind of look and you say, what if this happened? What if aliens came down? What if society collapsed? And that leads into my next question, how The Walking Dead, because I think that's one of the reasons The Walking Dead, it's a graphic novel series, but it's a TV series too, why it became so popular in the last 10, 12 years since it's been on. Can you talk about how The Walking Dead inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the creators of Walking Dead, the people who did all the wonderful work on the sets, inspired me, because that's how I want readers kind of to have that in mind when they're reading. Like, everything has come to a screeching halt. And I think that The Walking Dead, the sets of The Walking Dead really portrayed what it would look like. Cities empty, just that eerie feeling. So yeah, that really inspired me. I love The Walking Dead. Big fan.
Yeah, I do too. Now, your books don't have zombies in them as much as we love those zombies. Your books seem a little bit more comparable to The Hunger Games or Divergent. Can you talk about how your world compares to those series?
Yeah, I am also a big fan of The Hunger Games in particular. I think my book it differs. I'll go ahead and say it's different in that it doesn't have quite the sci-fi feel to it. You don't have characters with purple hair or pink hair. I don't even. Elizabeth Banks did an awesome job in The Hunger Games, but it doesn't have that. They're both fighting against the sense of a totalitarianism society and what it would be like if a dictator ruled the land. And I think in my book, the president has declared martial law, and the state of Texas is resisting that. And the main character's uncle is a senator from Texas. And so that's kind of the catalyst of where everything begins.
I think it's really fascinating how you see the world and the future. Like you said, it's grittier, it's more raw. Mm-hmm. It's probably more realistic than the pink hair and the flashiness, yeah. Right? And that authenticity, I think, is what attracts me to your books and your series. There's like this darkness. Can you talk about, Susy, your propensity to kind of lean over to the dark side?
Well, I am not a pessimist by nature by any means. I'm more of a realist, and when I first started writing, I wanted to be a romance writer. I do try to weave that in there. I think we're talking about the backdrop of the books, but in the center of it are my two main characters, Lacey and Jace, and it's really about their relationship and how this backdrop brings them together, and how they fight for their freedoms and against injustices and things that happen to them along the way.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when we talk about you just thought you'd be a romance writer and then you kind of shifted gears. That's interesting. And I think, that's opposite ends of the same coin, right? You hear it all the time. Comedy, tragedy, love, hate, or fear. I really kind of think you're keying in really on what the opposite of love is. It's fear. It's, that loneliness, like you say, Lacey has in the book, and then finding somebody and that fear of it being ripped away, the fear of society crumbling, the fear of losing it all. So I think what you're doing there is, in a way, you're writing romance. It's just not the HEA, the happily ever after.
Right.
Yeah. And
I love those books.
Yeah. And there's a place for them in your world. There is a love story because Lacey does find somebody, right? You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Lacey, when she's on the farm, she gives a group of stragglers a home, gives them asylum. It's kind of a found family type of situation because she doesn't have any family except for those that she has allowed asylum onto the farm with. And a longtime friend, Jace Cooper, asks her for asylum, and he's fighting demons of his own. I loved writing Jace. I just loved writing him. But he asked for asylum as well, and he's been in love with Lacey for a long time, and so he has to navigate the relationship from a different perspective because he does not know what has happened to her at first, and so her coldness and things like that kind of get him to wonder, what has happened to her. So that their relationship kind of is rocky at first, but it evens out pretty quick. But like you said, the fear of things being ripped away, and a good author always tortures her main characters, and so
I like that. You are absolutely right, and I think that's a great way to justify why writers torture their main characters, right? You're supposed to.
Yeah,
do
you
that.
wouldn't really have a story, and you circling back to the question that you asked earlier about why I lean towards darker things. I don't know necessarily if I lean toward darker things more than just looking at it from a really realistic point of view. I'm a realist by nature, and realistically, things don't have a happy ever after as much as women across the world, women around the world want that to happen. A lot of times that's not the way it works out. So I just try to portray a more realistic point of view.
Yeah. Now, readers can definitely grab a copy of Asylum. That's book 1. And then they can get Ascendant. Can you tell us a little bit more specifically what's going on in book 2, in Ascendant? What's the lay of the land?
All right. Well, Lacey and Jace are together. And I think I mentioned her uncle briefly. He's really the catalyst. He's what starts this whole thing. because he has a political agenda of his own. He wants control over the United States in a major way, and he's using his niece and Jace to help him get what he wants. So they're running from him, and so that's where Ascendant begins, is with them on the run. And it doesn't last very long, and he finds them and separates them and sends Lacey to Mexico City with a payment to a very treacherous man that ends up holding her hostage. And Lacey finds herself in a human trafficking world very quickly. So that's where it kind of begins.
Yeah, you got me. I'm hooked. And things like that, unfortunately, human trafficking is a reality today. That's not even just in a dystopian world. Right. You raise things, issues, ideas that, again, like you were saying before, you're authentic, you're a realist, and I commend you for that, because a lot of authors do. They want to stay away from things that, might be triggering to some or might evoke unpleasantness. But at the same time, I think there's a certain amount of healing and a catharticness that comes when you can read about that or experience it, even just through the pages of a book. And then it can help people too. It can help people learn and heal and adapt a little bit as well.
Yeah. In the back of Asylum, I have an author's note where readers can get more information if they need it about rape. Rape victims, unfortunately, are very common in this country. And RAINN, RAINN, you can Google that, and their website will come up. They have an amazing website and help for victims of assault. In Ascendant, I have an author's note about human trafficking, and there is a website that I mentioned. It's called Can You See Me? You can Google that as well and find out more facts about human trafficking. I live in Oklahoma. I live in a small town in Oklahoma. It's along the I-35 corridor where there is human trafficking. It's a very real thing in Oklahoma. So raising awareness for that was one of my goals when I wrote Ascendant.
And I applaud you for doing that, because that's such an important thing to do. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing those organizations that are helping people. And another thing you do, I'm going to switch gears, because you are the curriculum specialist for the Kanza Tribe. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I am Ganze and Wajaji. Wajaji is what the Osages call themselves. So I am Ka and Osage. Side note, Killers of the Flower Moon, which was filmed in Fairfax and Pawhuska, Oklahoma, is coming out, I think, in October. And my boss played a major character in that film. So I encourage everybody, if anybody is curious as to the history of the Osages, that's a good, it's going to be good. And Martin Scorsese, I don't know of a bad film that he's done. So he directed it, and from what I hear, did an amazing job. That he, my boss, she was played a major role in that. So.
That is so cool. That is really neat.
Yeah, it's amazing to work with her. She is one of the last fluent speakers in the Kanza Tribe. We do not have any first generation speakers. They're all second, and she's a second. But even then, we don't have fluent speakers. I'm not fluent. I study the language. I love language, so it's a pleasure to work in that area.
why, can you talk a little bit about why there aren't speakers of the language? Can you give us some of the history, if you could?
Yeah. The Kanza Tribe was a small tribe to begin with, way back in the 1800s, the early 1800s. They were, or even before that, they were a part of the Osages, the Ponkas, the Kaws, the Omaha, and the Quapaws. They were all one tribe, and they broke off into separate tribes. And so Kanza was a small tribe to begin with, and then they went through this smallpox, hit them hard. You hear about the Cherokees and their Trail of Tears. Well, the Kaw, probably more tribes than you think, had a walk of their own, and the Kaws were included in that. And when the government forced them to move from their home along the Neosho River in Kansas, they forced them to walk in the wintertime. It took them 17 days to get from Council Grove, Kansas, down to Kay County, Oklahoma, where their small reservation now resides. So I think when they started the walk, there were 500 of them. When they got here, that number was probably cut in half.
That's horrifying. That's horrific. And you hear, like you said, you hear about the Trail of Tears, and knowing that this happened in our nation's past, I think it's so important to not forget that ever. And I commend you for your work and your boss's work and raising awareness, because that's so important. That's how we remember. And it's so unfortunate that members, even today, of the tribe feel disconnected from their own language because of that.
Yeah, they were. It was human genocide is actually what it was. They forced them into boarding schools, their children into boarding schools, and they were whipped and beaten if they spoke their own language. They were forced to learn English, and so they were silenced. And when you're silenced, it's kind of hard for a tribe whose main communication was verbal. It was oral. It was not written. They did not write things down. When you silence them, things get lost. And when an elder dies, that knowledge that was locked away in their head dies with them. And so it's a struggle. It is a big struggle to keep not only the language, the culture alive in the tribe. I think that's probably true with most tribes.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of indigenous people, not only in the United States, but around the world too. You hear and see of that about that happening. And I think that just, it plays into your books and your themes and everything as well. You've really enlightened us with some amazing information about the Kanza tribe. Is it Kanze or Kanza? Am I saying it?
Kanze.
Kanze. Okay, sorry. Are there any?
That's fine. Most people don't really know how to say it. Kansas, the state of Kansas, was actually, fun fact, named after the Kaw tribe. So.
Okay. Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask you, if there was any facts or things that people didn't necessarily realize. So yeah. Good to know. That's how the state of Kansas got its name.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Susy, as a writer, as somebody who has gone on this journey, and here you are talking about it today with me on the show. Do you have any advice or tips for other writers who are thinking about telling their story or writing their own series?
Probably the hardest thing that I went through when writing Asylum was actually writing it. If that makes sense. You just have to be consistent. I didn't really gain any ground until I got up every morning before I went to work and wrote for an hour. And then I started gaining some momentum. So I think if you want it bad enough, find a spot in your day. You're going to have to carve it out because most people are just too busy to write. I think that's the best advice I could give anybody, is just to keep writing. You'll get there.
Yep, exactly. Think of it this way, and this goes back to the old quote. Mark Twain, I'm not sure who said it. Albert Einstein, Stephen King, all of the authors, creative people, inventors, everybody who has ever existed in the world had exactly the same number of hours in the day as you do.
Exactly right.
So you make the time if it's important to you, and you can do it just like you have done it, Susy. I am so excited about both of your books and the books that are to come, because there's more down the pike. Can you tell us what's going to happen in the future?
I am currently writing the third book, and their adventure continues. I am going to, I can tell you that I am going to delve into more into Lacey's brother. He's an interesting character to me. And also in the second book, the character Brian, he's a secondary character, but he kind of played a bigger role than I thought he was going to play when I first wrote him in Asylum. So it's kind of interesting to see how these characters morph and come to life. They're alive in my head. But yeah, I am continuing their journey. They will end up with the happily ever after. It's just going to take some time.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you're bringing and fleshing out some of the other characters. That's what makes a series really exciting, is when you can kind of explore and go on these paths with other characters. So thank you for doing that. Can you tell everyone where they can go to find you online, find your website, find your books, social media? Give us all your details.
Okay. You can, my website is susysmith.com. It's pretty easy, except that I spell my name Susy, not Suzy or IE. So you can find me there, or on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I think that's the place that I spend most of my time, other than my website is on Facebook.
Excellent. Susy Smith, author of the Asylum series. Asylum is book 1. Ascendant is book 2. Make sure you're checking out her books. You can find them Amazon, everywhere people find books. Go into your local bookstore or your library, actually, and ask them to carry these books. That's another great way to get them on store shelves and library shelves everywhere. Susy, thank you so much for being here today. I enjoyed talking with you.
Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it as well.
My pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for being with us today on the Books That Make You show. You can find out more about us on our website. It is booksthatmakeyou.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Make sure you ring the bell, subscribe, get notifications. That way you never miss a fascinating show with authors just like Susy Smith. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.